Arcade Heroes.
Hello fellow arcade heroes, this is Adam with arcadeheroes.com coming at you with a bit of news for this vlog, and of course the format of the vlog here is a little bit different than it has been in the past. For starters, I'm not at the arcade, so you don't have the ambient noise or people interrupting me with certain needs to play games. But also got this new streaming software set up. As been thinking about doing some streaming in recent times, and so wanted to experiment with it. So I guess we'll do this as a non-live stream style thing with this software, and so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, as you can tell by the title of this video, as well as the background image to the side here, gotta get my directions right, this is Tetris related and Tetris arcade related. Now, when it comes to Tetris in arcades, well, there's a long history. I mean, Tetris has been on everything out there. Back in 1987, there was Versus Tetris on the Nintendo Play Choice platform, and then Atari as well as Sega both had their variations of Tetris that were available to arcades as JAMA boards, and so you might have come across some of those machines out there, although of course Atari's version was more common in the US, Sega was more common in Japan, and over the years there's been a number of other variations to Tetris showing up out there. Probably one of the more interesting ones to me would be the Tetris the Grandmaster, which is kind of a hardcore version of Tetris, and there was 4 versions of those, and actually the 4th version of that was the last time that we had Tetris in the arcade. But also we have Sega's Giant Tetris, which came out in 2009, was mainly available in Japan, although there was this version that you see here, as well as another LCD version with a metallic cabinet that was also released in very limited quantities. I think I heard something like less than 30 were actually sold in the US, and so it's not common to come across that one. But anyways, with all of those out of the way, I received an email from one John Bachman the other day, and actually took me a day or so to get to it, as it was in my spam folder, so sorry about that. But big thanks to John for getting me this information, as well as providing the photos and the video that will play at the end of this that shows the new Tetris Dimensions. And so I'll just read off what he said here to describe where he came across this, how he came across it. And so he said, "This past Saturday I was at the Walden Galleria Mall in my current hometown of Buffalo, New York, which happens to have a Dave & Buster's. And as a side note, I believe this is the same Dave & Buster's that another Arcade Heroes writer, Sarah AB87, often goes to, and that's where she's found a lot of different test games, especially ones from ICE." But continuing with what John wrote, he said, "While passing through D&B, I noticed a new game called Tetris Dimensions that I'd never seen before. I was immediately intrigued, being a pretty avid Tetris player most of my life, and a huge fan of games like Tetris Effect, Tetris 99, and TGM. TGM would be Tetris Grandmaster, sorry. I made it a point to come back on half-price games day to put an hour or 2 into it, and to my surprise there was an ICE Games employee there who kindly informed me that this is actually an initial prototype and supposedly cannot be found anywhere else right now. He seemed pretty legit, as he was not an employee of D&B, but still had keys to most of the ICE Game units on site." And then after he did some research, he saw that there was no information about this anywhere, and was kind enough as a reader to Arcade Heroes to send it my way. And so we will take a look here at Tetris Dimensions. And so first off, we have this artwork image from the center control panel on the lower portion near the coin doors. But after that tease, here's the marquee, And of course, being at Dave & Buster's, it's not terribly surprising that this involves tickets, is a redemption game as I like to call them, and so that's why it has the big marquee there that says win big tickets. But otherwise I like the look of the marquee. But I guess before we get too much further, I should add a disclaimer. I've been throwing this on different location test videos as of late because I guess there have been some problems with different manufacturers, as the Arcade Hero site is one where a lot of games have been revealed that have been revealed nowhere else first time. Sometimes there's people within the arcade industry where they I guess maybe don't read the whole thing, or I'm not sure what happens, but they end up calling the manufacturers and wanting to know how soon they can buy it, or they want to buy the machine right now. But oftentimes these are beta tests, and so a lot of things can change, or they're not close to production, and sometimes they don't even get released. And so, as a disclaimer, everything that you see here could change. They could change the marquee, they could change the cabinet entirely, they could change the software, they could cancel the game, who knows. So just a little disclaimer there. So if you call up your local friendly distributor and want to know when they can get this game, chances are they probably haven't even heard about it yet unless they've seen this video. So just throwing that out there. Anyways, I like the look of the marquee as it is so far, obviously backlit with LEDs as everything is these days. And then going to the control panel, we find out who it is that made this game, and that would, well, as I mentioned in the description that John provided, ICE, which is also known as Innovative Concepts in Entertainment, but they usually just go by ICE, and of course that's their logo there. They are based out of New York, and they are mainly focused on redemption type games. They have a lot of sports games like NBA Hoops that do pretty well. And so they've had a very strong relationship with the other company that's mentioned on their Play Mechanics. And Play Mechanics is owned by Raw Thrills, but even though they're technically a Raw Thrills company, they do a lot of other contract work and have partnerships with companies like ICE. And so the most recent game that these two companies worked on was Centipede Chaos, which was released earlier this year, and there's videos of this on my channel and other blog posts about that particular game as well. But now of course they're getting together and collaborating on Tetris. So next up we have a look at the cabinet, and so it looks like a pretty compact design. I mean, just judging by the other machines that are in the area, right next to it is Spin and Win, I think it is, and those are, I think, about 9 feet tall. I can't remember how wide the dimensions are on that particular redemption game, but it looks like this one isn't. I mean, it's obviously not as big as the Spin and Win, but it's also nice and compact, standard these days. Obviously not as compact as a game from the 80s or the 90s, but let's get another angle there at the whole cabinet. Overall, this cabinet looks a little bit like the Wheel of Fortune cabinet that Raw Thrills and Play Mechanics had designed years ago, I think 10 years ago. And it had a bench to it as well that you could get, but otherwise the cabinet's similar to that. And just another angle here, a little bit dark, but that's okay. And so now the control panel. One thing that, I mean, it's not surprising that they use a joystick on this. ICE has used joysticks with Centipede Chaos as well, but one interesting thing that you really haven't seen a lot of these days, in this day and age I should say, is an ambidextrous button layout. Now that was very common with Sega games back in the early 80s. Zaxxon and Pengo and a bunch of others had the action buttons on both sides of the joystick, but for the few joystick games that have been out there in this day and age, they just have not done that very often. But again, that could change by the end of, or when this hits final production, which we don't know when that is. I did reach out to ICE, didn't hear anything back from them on this yet, so I don't know. This could be released at the end of this year, could be released in 2020. That's what happened with Centipede Chaos. Is Centipede, I can't remember exactly when we found out about that one. It might have been March this year, and then it came out a few months later. but there were several changes to the cabinet in particular. So who knows, but I kind of hope they keep this idea as well. I always liked ambidextrous layouts, even though I am right-handed like most everybody is out there. Sorry, lefties. I had a good friend that was a left-handed person, but so nothing wrong with that. But you know, I kind of wonder how people might take to that, so it could be interesting to see. And then underneath the monitor you have this speaker panel, and what's kind of neat about this when you look at it close enough is instead of the typical speaker pattern with just speaker grills with holes and whatnot, the holes here are actually tetraminos, so the T-shaped tetramino, and so that's a nice little touch. And of course also here is where you see a Raw Thrills logo. I believe the Raw Thrills logo ended up on the Centipede Chaos cabinet. At least it was featured prominently on the prototypes. But I can't remember if it was removed for the production ones or not. Then we have the full control panel, 2-player game, not a 4-player or 3-player. Centipede Chaos was 3-player in case you missed that one, but always nice to have Tetris as a 2-player game at least. And then of course we're back to the beginning there. And so yeah, overall that's the cabinet and hardware design. So I do have a video that John also provided here which shows some of the attract mode and how it plays, and so I'll just let that play here, and I'll turn off the music, so we'll watch that, comment a little bit more, and then we'll be done. Alright, so overall, just looking at that, it looks like the quality on the graphics is pretty good, pretty sharp, nice HD display. Don't know if it would be a 4K game or a 1080p, but overall looks nice, colorful, just as you would want Tetris, and the gameplay also is just like you would want Tetris to be. Clearing out the lines, of course it has that junk filler at the bottom there, and since this is playing for tickets, the goal is not only to clear the lines, but clear the lines with the gems inside of them. So my guess is that this is time limited, and so it's just to try and clear as many lines as you can, get as many gems as you can to win tickets. And of course when they say big tickets, there's obviously got to be some way to get a bonus ticket feature. Now, like Centipede Chaos, one thing I like to emphasize is that generally, so far in almost every case, that Play Mechanics has done something like this in recent years. They did Deal or No Deal, and it didn't have an amusement option, but Centipede Chaos did have an amusement option to it, so that, say, somebody like myself who has an arcade, I could buy a Centipede Chaos and then I could turn off the redemption mode, and so people could play it just for points, just for fun. And so while we don't have any confirmation on that yet as to whether or not Tetris Dimensions will have that, I would say it's a safe assumption to say that indeed that there would be that, and so it wouldn't have to be just for redemption play. And the nice thing about these games that do have amusement modes to them is that the gameplay does change, and in those instances it plays like a normal video arcade game does and should. And so I did enjoy Centipede Chaos in the amusement mode, and so if you're a big fan of Tetris and maybe you don't care too much about the ticket side, perhaps the location that gets one, if the game again has an amusement mode to it, can run it like that, and then you can just play a new variation of Tetris against or against the computer or against a friend. And so yeah, that's Tetris Dimensions. Again, don't know when or if this will be released, but I would say, just judging by the look of this cabinet, it looks like it's not terribly far off from where a production model would be. If I were to continue guessing, as this will be at IAPA 2019 in November, the week before Thanksgiving, and so we'll probably get more information about it by then, possibly before then, given that it's August already, and who knows exactly what their plans are on that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, about a new Tetris game for arcades, and what you would prefer to play it as a redemption game or an amusement game and whatnot. And so we'll keep our eyes peeled for this one, and we probably will have more information on it before too long. But thank you for watching, and stay tuned to arcadeheroes.com for more.